Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
So, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Rebecca W.
Hi, I'm Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
Start my timer. I have to watch the time because my best friend and I joke that we belong to a program called On and On and On. And I don't want to do that today. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay, good. A little louder. I'll try to talk a little louder. I am crying already, and I haven't started talking yet. Thank you, Linda, for introducing me. Linda ran up to me that first day at that meeting and gave me the biggest hug, and I knew right away that I was in the right place. And I think I'll just go back to the beginning. So I've heard people say in Al-Anon that they're cradle Al-Anons, and I consider myself a cradle Al-Anon because I was born and I needed a meeting. And my dad was an alcoholic, and when I came to Al-Anon, the funny thing is I wasn't really sure if Al-Anon was the right program for me. I didn't know if I qualified. I heard the word qualifier, and I thought, well, my husband isn't drinking, and I don't know if I really qualify for this program. And I laugh about it now because I have so many, I qualify in every possible way that you can qualify for this. I qualify myself. Just being brought up in this disease and having been so affected from the get-go. My earliest memories are of my dad drinking and creating a lot of havoc in our home. And, we would go out on vacations, and my dad would get drunk and we would get lost, and we would be driving in the dark on the freeway, and my parents would be fighting, and my mom would jump out of the car on the freeway, and my dad would end up in jail, and we'd sleep in the parking lot. And I remember spending a lot of time in San Pedro in bar parking lots. There's like a bar with a dog on the roof there. I thought I imagined that until I saw it later as an adult. I'm like, there really is. That really happened. There's a bar in San Pedro with a dog on the roof. I remember spending time in bar parking lots. We'd pick up, my dad was a sailor, and we'd pick him up when he got back in, when his ship came in, and then we'd go straight to a bar, and he would drink for hours, and we would sit in the car, and then my mom would eventually send us in to get him. And my mom is from the Philippines. She's an immigrant from the Philippines. My dad was a sailor. It's a pretty common story. He went to the Philippines, he met her, and he brought her here. She was 25 years his junior, and so my dad was 52 when I was born, and my mom was, whatever, minus 25. And, sorry, I'm not good at math when I'm not nervous, so. My dad was abusive, and, for those of us that grow up in Al-Anon, we know what that looks like. In alcoholism, we know what that looks like, right? So it's a lot of hiding in your room and locking your bedroom doors and holding your breath. And one of the first things that I learned to do in program was breathe. My best friend tells me all the time to breathe, because whenever I'm upset, I still hold my breath. It's the first thing I do, is I hold my breath. And, I came out of that situation really angry. I felt like my mom didn't protect me, and I was raised to believe that we had to take care of my dad, because he was older than my mom, because really he brought her here to take care of him as he aged. That was her job. And so that obligation was passed on to my brother and myself. And so I had a strong belief that I had to take care of my dad, and I was pissed at my mom. When I was about 10, my mom left. She left for 6 months. I can't really tell you for that 6 months where I slept in my house, or how I got to school, or how we got fed. But she came back 6 months later, and because my dad threatened her, so she came home. And so that's just to give you an idea of what my life was like growing up. I'm sure some of you can identify with that. My dad was like the town drunk, so he would pass out on his horn in our front yard, and the horn would be honking in the middle of the night. I would hear him trying to get in the front door, and he couldn't get his key into the keyhole, so I'd lay in bed and listen to him struggle with the key. And we'd have to get up in the morning and go find the car. And I wish I had known about Alateen. I do, because I think that would have helped me a lot, but I didn't know about Alateen. So I blocked out a lot of it, and I have a friend who knew me then, and she'll say things like, "Remember when your dad drove the car through the garage door?" And I go, "No." "Remember when your dad drove onto the freeway off-ramp?" No. So there's a lot of that, and I brought all of that with me, into my adulthood. And when I was 16, I met my husband, and I said, I'm not going to be one of those girls whose father's an alcoholic that marries an alcoholic. Not me. When I met him, he wasn't drinking. His brother-in-law had bet him. This is your stepfather I'm talking about. His brother-in-law had bet him that he couldn't stop drinking for 30 days. And that's when I met him. He wasn't drinking. I was like, he doesn't drink. It's been 16 days. Great. He's great. And then of course he did start drinking. And then I just told myself, well, I'm not going to marry him. I'm not going to marry. It's just, I'm young. I'm not going to marry him. And we stayed together. And oh boy. So growing up in alcoholism, you do try to comfort yourself. You do a lot of things. Some people lose themselves in books. Some people try to comfort themselves with food. Some girls obsess on boys and become very promiscuous and all of that. And I did almost all of those things. And I did seek relief in other 12-step programs. And I'm a big respecter of the traditions, and I won't go into any details about that. But I did seek relief in other 12-step programs. And the good thing is that my boyfriend started going to meetings, and he got sober when he was 23, and so it's been, 22 years, and we got married when he was, I think we got engaged when he was like 4 weeks sober. And I said, yes, I'll be engaged to you. Yeah. He'll say, how did you get engaged to him? He's a drunk. And I go, no, I'm not getting married, I'm just getting engaged. And so we did get married. And, I want to just back up a little bit and say that I have a brother who's 2.5 years older than me, and he actually took a lot of the brunt of the physical abuse that went on in my home. And he started using drugs when he was in junior high, and he's a lifelong alcoholic and drug addict, and he has spent his adult life in and out of prison and on and off the streets. And when I finally got to Al-Anon, I really, really needed this program. My dad had become very elderly. He was still drinking. My parents had divorced. My dad was self-neglecting, and there was nobody, he couldn't take care of himself anymore. And my mom would call me and say, you need to go check on your dad. You need to go check on your dad. And I'd go over there, and I would find him, and by this time he was in his 80s. And I would find him laying in his bed, having been there for several days, laying in his own urine, and alcoholism, it's not pretty, in his own vomit, in his own feces. And I would call the paramedics, and they would come, and they'd say, what year is it? And he'd say, 2002. And they'd say, who's the president? And he knew. Well, what day is it? And he knew all of those things. And they'd say, he's fine. He's just a drunk. Like, we can't do anything, And so started getting really adamant and telling the paramedics that he was not fine and that he, you know, that I knew him and that I knew that he was dehydrated and disillusioned and blah, blah, blah. So they would take him to the hospital sometimes and they would give him IVs and feed him and get him healthy and send him home, and he would do it again. And that went on. That went on for about a year and a half. And in the meantime, my brother's drug addiction was out of control, and those were just hard days. I mean, I had 2 children. I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I was getting in the car and driving across town, and I never knew what I was going to find on the other side of the door, which is exactly how I grew up. Exactly. I would come home from school and stand at my front door and take a deep breath, because I never knew what the heck was going to be going on the other side of that door. And, you know, I didn't grow up really having any trust in myself or anybody else. There were small people, like I can look back now. I grew up, you know, going to a regular religion, and I grew up with a lot of faith. And I would go to bed at night when I was young, and I would pray. I would pray to the God of my understanding. And I would say, please, you know, protect me. You know, fix this. Something's really wrong in my house. You know, make it better. And day after day, you know, it didn't get better. It really didn't. And so for years, I felt like my mother had abandoned me. She couldn't protect me. God had abandoned me. He didn't protect me. You know, my father couldn't take care of me. My brother was a drug addict, so he was, you know, he was not there for me at all. As soon as he started using drugs, he was in junior high, so I was like 10 or 11. I was just alone. You know, I was just alone, and I was trying to get through all that. And I used to say that when I was first in recovery, I would say that I felt like when I was young, there was a plane crash. Like my family was in a plane crash, and I was the only one that survived. And, you know, it still kind of feels like that sometimes, but I'm grateful. You know, I'm grateful to have survived the crash, the plane crash, the train wreck, you know, called alcoholism. And, you know, I'm not angry at my parents anymore. I was angry at them for a very long time, and I've learned in this program, you know, that alcoholism really and truly is a disease. Alcoholism was the thief in the night that came into my family home and robbed us. You know, my dad didn't grow up imagining his life would turn out the way that it did, because he did ultimately die. Acute and chronic alcoholism, that's what it says on his death certificate. You know, I'm sure as a young man he had hopes and dreams like everybody, and you know, when he had a family, he had hopes and dreams for his family like everybody, but alcoholism was the thief in the night that came in and robbed us of all of that, and it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. I read in one of our, I think it was the ODAT the other day, that I no longer seek, when I have a problem, I no longer seek who's to blame. I only seek to find out what I did to contribute to my own problems. And you guys have taught me that. Really, honestly, all of you in recovery have been my parents. You have raised me. You have raised me, because I came here as an adult woman who was not raised. And I just didn't know how to take care of myself. I didn't know how to feed and water my body appropriately. I didn't know that I needed to get enough sleep. I didn't know that when I was upset, it might be because I'm tired or haven't nourished myself. You know, I didn't know how to make sure my own needs were met. I didn't know any of that. And I didn't know that I wasn't somehow physically connected to everyone around me. But everything that was happening to you was also happening to me. I had no boundaries. I was like a sponge. So you came in the room with a problem, or I picked up on all the negative energy, and I owned it. And then I had a problem too, you know, and we just didn't have any separation in our house. Like everybody was just a mess all the time. So today, I'm not mad at my parents anymore. I have so much compassion for my dad. Those last few years of his life, I don't know if it was a privilege. I don't know if you call it a privilege, but to be able to be the one person, you know, and my husband was right there with me the whole time, and I'm so grateful. To be the one person that could show up when nobody else wanted to. I mean, it was ugly. It was so ugly. And to show up and to find him in that situation. We had him in the hospital once, and we moved him to like an assisted living facility so he could rehabilitate, but it was a sober one. And so there was no alcohol there, and they called me, and they're like, excuse me, but your dad just left in his bathrobe in a wheelchair, and he can't walk, and we don't know where he went. And I was like, of course he did. Of course he did. Somebody read in the meeting in that open letter to the alcoholic last week that don't pour my alcohol down the drain because I will only get more. Well, don't take your dad to a sober living facility. Don't take your 80-year-old father who's not sober to a sober living facility. Because he will call a druggy neighbor and pay him money to come with a wheelchair and take him in his bathrobe home, put him in bed, go to the store, buy him a bottle of bourbon, and bring it back to him. And my dad called me the next day and he said, Becky, he's the only one that called me Becky. I'm home and I can't walk. I know, Dad. You're home and you can't walk. That's why we took you to that facility, because you can't walk. Well, I think I need to go back. Okay, well, I think you need to call the man that brought you there and tell him, bring the wheelchair back and take you back. I called Adult Protective Services at one point because my dad was in a really, really bad physical situation like I have described. And one more time, he told the paramedics to get the hell out of his house and that he didn't want to go and that he was fine. And it was, 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. And what do you do? This man is in bed, he's in his own mess, he can't walk, and he's refusing help. What do you do? It talks about in our literature, we learn to find contentment and even happiness, whether the alcoholic is sober or not. I went home, I cried, I called Adult Protective Services. I said my 82-year-old father is in bed, he's sick, he can't walk, he can't eat, he's drunk, he has a neighbor who's perfectly willing to come and keep bringing him more alcohol as long as my dad keeps paying him, and I don't know what to do. And I was frantic. And I left a message on this woman's answering machine, and she at 4:45 on a Friday, and she called me back, and she said, I can hear the panic in your voice. I have a lot of compassion for you. I'm going to send the police out, and there's nothing more you can do. Your father has a right to live his life the way he wants to live. We can't put alcoholics in jail just because they're 80, or in the hospital just because they're 80. They still have a right to live their life the way they want to live it. And whether this alcoholic is your father, your child, your husband, your brother, your wife, your mother, they have a right to live their life the way that they want to live it. So I went home and I cried. And I cried. And the police came out, and the police poured his alcohol down the drain, cleaned him up, and took him to the hospital. But the people in this program helped me. They helped me through that time, and it went on. It went on for a while, and he had signed a do not resuscitate? No, take no heroic measures. He had signed a no heroic measures paper, and I was the person who had power of attorney. Thank you. Over healthcare. Sorry. And it's so painful to go back, because it was a hard time. And so I had durable power of attorney. So, one of the last time he went into the hospital, they called me and they said, what do you want us to do? How seriously do you want us to treat him? And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, it's your decision. We can keep doing this forever. We can keep getting him well. And I realized in that moment that I could make a decision to have him not treated. And that was a hard day. My dad had been battling with this disease his entire life. He was 82 years old. And he wanted to die. He was trying so hard to kill himself. And I called my best friend, and I said, why? Who's in the program, of course. And I said, why? Why do I have to decide? Why doesn't God just take him? And she said, honey, God's trying to take him. You need to get out of the way. And I called the doctor back and I said, don't treat him. Just don't treat him. And they told me it would take about 3 days for him to die. And it took 10 days. And I went to the hospital every day, and nobody else went. There wasn't a person left in the world that would go. My mom didn't go. My brother didn't go. Just me and my husband. We both went, and he finally died. And that was February 10th, 2003. That's his sobriety date. Because that was the day he was set free from this disease. And you guys got me through that, you know. The one thing that I've learned in this program is that God is not in the business of preventing tragedy. God is in the business of resurrecting us from our grief. Bad things happen over and over again, and we just keep going to our higher power for support. The best prayer that I heard at a meeting was a man whose son had overdosed. Some of you know this family. His son had overdosed at the age of 21 on heroin. And he said that at night he would pray, God, comfort me. Comfort me. And that is the prayer that I go to when I'm so powerless over the people in my life and I can't do anything about their decisions, their choices. You know, when they call you and they're begging, please, please, send money, I'm in jail, I have nothing, if I don't pay my rent, if I don't pay for this hotel, my kids are going to be on the street, you know. That's my prayer, God, comfort me. And help. Help is like the very best prayer. Should I tell my funny prayer story? So this morning I was so nervous to come and speak here. And so I was like, you know, multiple people in the program were emailing or texting me and calling me, and I was super nervous. And so I was about to get in the shower, so I turned on the shower and I was about to jump in, and I thought, I know, I should pray, because like I've heard from my sponsor and my best friend, and I've heard from other people, and I'm still nervous, I should pray. So I run back into my room, I get down on my knees, and I'm like this at my bed, and I'm praying, and my 13-year-old daughter walks in. She's like, Mom, what are you doing? Well, I'm praying, and I'm naked, so... And the funny thing is that she didn't think that was odd at all. She goes, maybe you should lock the door next time. So what I know today is that God was always there for me. It's just that God couldn't really prevent any of those things that were happening to me because all the people in my life around me had free will. And, you know, my dad was an alcoholic, and my mom, she was just doing the best she could. And I have to say that my mother, you know, for so many years I was so angry at my mother. And if you were raised in alcoholism, you know what it feels like, that parent that you feel like they didn't take care of you. And today I'm grateful. I'm grateful because she could have walked out. She could have left. She could have gone back to the Philippines. She had a lot of choices. I used to say, that woman didn't do me any favors by staying married to my dad. She should have left him. We would have been better off. And this woman one day looked at me and said, or you might have lived under a bridge. She might have taken you and your brother and not have been able to support you, and maybe you would have lived in a cardboard box under a bridge. Maybe she was sacrificing her own happiness to keep a roof over your head. And that's true. I mean, she came here from another country. She was 23 years old. She barely spoke the language. She came for a better life. And she found herself married to an alcoholic, you know, who was an embarrassment and abusive and just horrible, really, to be around. And she had these 2 children, and she really didn't have a lot of options. And I think about myself at the age of 23. Would I have been able to, to do that? Probably not. Well, maybe if I was in the program. You guys could have helped me. So today I have a lot of gratitude for my mother, and she lives in another country. After my brother passed away, she moved to England, isn't that funny? After my brother passed away, my dad passed away, I was so relieved because I thought, finally, you know, I didn't have a lot of Al-Anon recovery, and I was like, finally, he's gone, and I can get on with my life, and I don't have to be weighed down by this anymore, and I don't have to worry anymore, I don't have to take care of it anymore. It just felt like this huge burden.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
And I don't know how long it was, maybe less than a year, when my brother's drug addiction just went full. You know, he just ended up getting addicted to meth. And it just went, he spiraled really fast. His wife left him, he was in and out of jail, and he was calling me, you know, at 11 o'clock at night or 12 midnight in the rain. Please, can I just sleep in your garage? I don't have anywhere to go. Please, can I just come stay at your house? When I was growing up, my brother and I had uncles that came and stayed at our house. And it was a bad situation, and we weren't safe with those people. And, you know, here was my brother, who I grew up with, who I was a child with, who I loved, and he was going to be on the streets. And I had a choice. And I had 2 children cozy in their beds. And I decided that it was my job to take care of my children, and that my brother was not a victim, he was a volunteer, and that it was his job to take care of him. And, you know, again, I said, no, you can't come sleep in my garage, no. And, you know, he would say things like, I can't, nobody will give me a break, I can't get my life together. And I'd say, you know what, I might be the only person on the face of this earth that believes that you can meet your own needs. But if I meet them for him, I knew then he would just rely on me instead. And it was a real disappointment to me when that started, because I thought, oh, finally, I'm relieved of this burden of having to worry about this alcoholic in my life and having to be responsible for him. And then all of a sudden, I felt like my brother just picked up the torch and started to carry it. But thank God, by then, I was in meetings regularly, I had a sponsor, I was working this program, and I realized that I didn't have to do that. That if he wanted to pick up that torch of somebody take care of me, I didn't have to take the torch. I didn't have to. And so I think the hardest thing about Al-Anon is that we still have the pain. Like, there's nothing to do about that pain of loving an alcoholic. It just hurts. It just hurts, and that's all there is to it. And I have to stay in my own life. You know, my sponsor says, wiggle your toes. Where are you? Wiggle your toes. What do you smell? What do you see? What do you hear? You know, stay where you are. Take care of yourself. And it's a full-time job managing my own affairs. My head is so crazy. I want to be in everybody else's business all the time. And just taking care of myself is a full-time job. And I've learned how to do that. And I've learned truly how to let go of the alcoholics in my life. And there are many. There are many. I have a nephew who's in jail right now facing very serious charges, and I pray for him every day. By the grace of God, my husband's been sober for 22 years, and I don't forget that ever when times get really, really hard. You know, in the ODAD it says, you know, you can always be grateful for sobriety, and I'm really, really grateful. I try never to forget that our lives could be so different. And I didn't think that my life would bring me where I am. You know, coming out of the house that I came out of, I thought that I would have like a screwed up marriage and divorces and screwed up kids, and that I would drop out of school. And you know, it didn't have to go that way, because you guys gave me the tools to show up and be an adult in this life, and to appreciate what I have, you know, and to make the best of it, and to find contentment and even happiness, regardless of what's going on with the people around me. I'm trying to work these steps. My sponsor calls steps 1, 2, and 3 the Al-Anon walls. You know, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, over and over again. And you know, I try to use my God box regularly. and ask for help a lot, and call and stay in touch with them when things are hard. And I try to be of service, which is why I'm here today. And that's when I was praying this morning, that's what God told me. You're not there for you, you're there for them, for the people that need to hear your story. And I hope someone, gets something out of what I said today. So I was on the Step a Year program when I came to town. So I worked the first 3 steps my first 3 years, and then year 4 I started my 4th step. And it took me a while to write that, and it was really, really long. And so I'd get together with my sponsor, and we'd sit for 2 hours, and I'd read some of it to her in 2 hours. And then, we'd get together and do it again. So that went on. So I actually got behind my Step a Year schedule. And I'm not recommending that. It's just what I did. And so recently I made a list of all my defects of character, and I read those to her, and there were many. There were like 25 or 27, I don't know, it was a lot. And, but working my steps is what that's the tools, that's the tool that really brings me to where I am today. That's the tool that I get up every day and I live my life in this moment, dealing with what's happening today, not stuck in all of that. And I always cry when I tell my story because it's painful. It was painful to go through, and it's painful to remember. But what I know today is that, this is what I started to say, was that God was always there for me. Always, in small ways, I can look back and I can see. There was the lady that lived a few doors down from me, and I would go to her house when I was a young girl, and we would play Mastermind. Mm-hmm. That game with the little colored pets. And we would play checkers, and she would make hot cocoa for me. And I had a couple teachers that really reached out to me. And actually, when I was in high school, I had a teacher that gave me some 12-step literature. She had us do this writing assignment, and I think I wrote something in there about my dad. But it wasn't Al-Anon. And anyway, so God was always there for me in those ways. And he always provided for me. God has always provided for me what I need when I need it. And I can look back on my life, and I can see that. And I can see that it never looked like I thought it was going to look. And I was reading in the program literature how we, despite all the evidence to the contrary, will continue to believe that things are going to go wrong and that we're not going to be taken care of. And we can look back and make lists of all the ways that we've been cared for by our higher power, and how, there's been interventions when we needed them that didn't look like, things were being intervened on, but you can look back and see it. And there's all this evidence, but despite all of that evidence, those of us who grew up in this program still assume that our needs aren't going to be met and that we're not going to be okay. And I just think that's a process of just coming to meetings and sharing your truth, and things work out. They always work out. I'm always given what I need. And the process of working the steps has helped a lot. And I talked about how I was so angry at my parents for a long time, and how I've been able to let that go. And a lot of that was working the steps. And I'm here to tell you that if you have a resentment that you cannot get rid of, or if you have a fear or a problem that you cannot let go of, the 12 steps will set you free. They will. If you can work step 1, that you're powerless over that person, place, thing, situation, or whatever, and that your life is unmanageable, and then if you can come to believe that God can restore you to sanity regarding that, and then if you make a decision to turn your life and your will over to God as you understand God, and then you inventory it, and then you share it with your sponsor, and then you figure out what your defects are, and you're willing to let them go, and then you make those amends, and then you continue to take inventory and work on your relationship with God and help others, you will be free. You will be free of whatever that is. Where am I on time? Okay. So today, I have these 2 children. They are 13 and 15. And they might as well be drug addicts because that's how much I obsess over them. And, having kids knocked me down. And it was having children that made me realize truly the depth of how much I had been affected by alcoholism. I knew I had been through a lot of pain, and I knew that I had a lot of growing up to do, but I didn't truly understand my fear and control issues until I had kids. And I used to say, years ago when I was in program, I used to say, if my kids, like if my son or my daughter end up being an alcoholic, that will be the end of me. That will be the end of me. That will be the thing that I cannot deal with, and Rebecca will be no more. I don't know, like I will spontaneously combust. I used to say that, and I believed it. I believed it so much. I was so afraid. Everything that they did, and I had to work the steps on this, you guys. I actually had to make an inventory of all my fears. And so I would make all these rules, and then I would try to enforce them. So you know all the things that people say you should do to be a good mom? Your children should play outdoors for 30 minutes a day. They should brush their teeth for 3 minutes a day. They should read for 20 minutes a day. They need to know how to write in cursive by 3rd grade. Why? I don't know. Nobody uses cursive. So they can write a letter to their grandparents. So all of those rules, and there are many rules when you have babies. They're supposed to sleep on their side, not their back. They could have SIDS. You need to feed them no whole milk until they're 6 months, and no solid food until they're 4 months, and you have to breastfeed. And you guys, for real, all of it, all of that was in my head all the time, and I tried to do it all. And I needed to make sure that my children were going to be perfect. Because the only way that I was going to be okay was if I raised these perfect children who were not going to have to turn to drugs and alcohol. And I'll be damned if I was going to let that happen. And so I put them in parent cooperation preschools and elementary classes so I could be there all the time. I'm not kidding. I joined moms clubs. I had to make sure. Because I hadn't learned yet that I could find contentment and even happiness, whether the alcoholic is drinking or not. I hadn't learned that. And so I was bound and determined to raise these perfect children, and I just about drove myself insane. My husband can attest to that. I drove him insane too. And I caused so much discord in my home because I was always stressed out. And everything bad that had ever happened to me, I was going to make sure. My kids aren't allowed to sleep over at people's houses, really. It's rare. It's a rare occasion. And that's because of my own fear, In my list of defects of character, in those 27 or whatever, my sponsor broke all 27 of those defects of character down into 2 categories. And they all fall under either control or fear. Every single one of them. My fear that I'm just not going to be okay. And growing up in alcoholism, I wasn't. I never knew what was coming tomorrow. I couldn't wait. I had to resolve a problem now. I had to make sure everything was going to be okay now, because there was no guarantee of tomorrow in my world. So I put all of that on my kids. And that's been a learning process for me, having to learn to let go. What's so great about being in program is that I've gotten to get to know myself to a degree that I can feel it now. I can feel it in my body when I'm obsessing and controlling, and I think, oh, this is bad. I'm doing that thing that I do. And it's that feeling of being so out of control, and I was such a rager. Rage was my biggest problem when I got to Al-Anon. I was raging all the time. My kids were afraid of me. And I would scream, and I would yell, and I would carry on, and it was all trying to control them. It was all about me trying to control my children so that I could be okay. Everything that I've ever worried about for my kids has been so that I can be okay. Whether it's my son on the pitcher's mound and he's not throwing strikes, or, my daughter isn't getting that part in that play, it's all about me being okay. And it's selfish. It's like, make me comfortable. Make me comfortable. Throw strikes, get good grades, make me comfortable. And that comes from growing up in alcoholism and feeling like I needed everyone around me to be okay so that I could be okay. And that was true then, because I was a child. But guess what? I'm not a child anymore. I'm an adult woman. And it's my job to make sure that I'm okay. And you guys, honestly, that is the dark cloud that my children were going to grow up under had I not come to Al-Anon. And it doesn't mean that I don't have those tendencies. It just means now that there are people in my life, when I call them and I start talking about that stuff, and they go, honey, your children don't have to perform for you to be okay. And I go, oh, I forgot. I forgot. So it's made me a better mother. Being here has made me a better wife. I feel like I'm more willing to listen and not so quick to get upset when I'm criticized. That checklist for maturity that we read, and it says a mature person, something about that we can take criticism realizing that it may contain an element of self-improvement. That I could not do. I could not do. And I had a therapist tell me just a few years ago that I was emotionally immature, and I was so pissed. People always laugh when I say that. I was so pissed that she said that to me because I feel like I've learned and I've tried and I've come such a long way. But you don't come out of the alcoholism, the kind of alcoholism that I came out of. You don't come out of that and automatically a few years, in, become a mature person. I read that checklist for maturity now, and I do not have the shame attacks that I used to have. I do not. It's not perfect. It's so not perfect. My rage, though, it has subsided so much. And I came very close this morning, and I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I came very closer to having a rage episode this morning than I've come in a very long time. And I think I was nervous about being here today. And my kids both had activities that they needed me to be there for, and I needed to be here. And so I was doing that mommy guilt thing and trying to make everybody happy, and it just doesn't work. I go into rage when I feel inadequate. The moment I start to feel inadequate to handle what's in front of me, whether it's people or work or whatever, I feel my whole body tense up, and that rage just wants to well up inside of me. And I began to feel very inadequate this morning. And I had the presence of mind, to say to myself, wow, you're about to have a rage split. And I walked away, and like I said, I was reaching out to people and praying, and that helped. Because I said to myself, you're trying to orchestrate everything to be exactly the way you think it needs to go, and nobody's cooperating. And that's basically what families look like, right? People trying to orchestrate, push back from some people. I mean, it's a family. Everyone has their own idea of how the day's supposed to go. And I got overwhelmed, and I started to slip into rage. And but I'll tell you that when I first started coming to Al-Anon, I was raging at my kids on a daily basis. And I remember saying something to my daughter a few years after I'd been here about how I used to yell so much. And she said, yeah, Mom, you hardly ever yell at us anymore. And that's a gift. That's a gift. And it doesn't come easy. You have to work the program. You have to work the steps. You have to call your sponsor. I email my sponsor every morning, and I say things like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to work 4 hours, I'm going to walk my dog, I'm going to abstain from raising my voice, I'm going to make this phone call. Like, I make a plan for the day. That's how I get through the day. And if I don't do it, then the next day when I email, I go, oh, accountability. I yelled at my daughter one time yesterday when she wouldn't pick up her shoes or whatever. Then I'm accountable for it, and that helps me not do it again. And sometimes it's embarrassing. Sometimes it's ugly. Like, I threw a hanger across the room when I was yelling at my daughter, and it's embarrassing. But you know what? I tell my sponsor, and she loves me anyway. I email, I'll grab her before a meeting, I'll call, and she loves me anyway. And then I might even have another similar episode the very next day. But I'll tell you what, if I'm turning myself in every day, it's not going to go on. It's not. Because then the next time I go to do it again, I'm going to remember. And I'm going to go, man, I felt like crap yesterday and the day before. I am not doing this again. And even if one of my kids deserves to be yelled at, in my mind, I'll walk away. And that's the thing, that how important is it really? I'm trying to control that person. And they won't be controlled. And I feel like I got to keep going in and going in. But what I've learned is I can walk away. And I can reevaluate. And I can get some sleep. My best friend says to me, get some sleep. You might wake up with a whole new set of feelings. And I always do. I always do. And I say that to my kids when they're really upset at night. I say, go to sleep, you're tired. You might wake up with a whole new set of feelings, you know? And I mean, you guys have just made me such a better parent, and I feel so grateful. I think I'm probably out of time. So I just want to end by saying this, that I do a lot of things wrong. I'm not noble. You know, I come here, I come here because I need to get better. I put my ass in the chair because I need to get better so that I can live this life. I feel very inept and inadequate. And I'd really rather just avoid reality than show up every day. Like every day, in my mind, I have a date with my couch. And my TV. And if I could just stay on my couch and watch TV, then nothing can ever hurt me. And that would be fine. Because at my core, I'm really just a little girl growing up in alcoholism that's afraid of everything. So for me to show up every day for life, it's hard. And you guys, you know, you guys make me brave, and you give me tools to show up and try again, and again, and again. And that's the other thing. You know, in those defects of character, how they say contrary action, or like the things that are defects are really assets, you know, looked at another way. And it's like perseverance for me, you know, is a big one, because I would screw up every day. Every day I'd get up and I'd be like, I'm gonna do better, and I'd screw up again. And that just taught me to keep going and to not give up. My worst day, you know, it's okay because I'm here and I'm trying, you know, and I'm open to what life has to offer. And I try not to figure out where I'm going. I try not to have an idea of where I'm headed. You know, when you hit a bump in the road, I try not to say, it needs to work out like this. I just try to say, God, wherever we're going, I'm there. Because if it's happening to me, it's in my highest good. And thank you. You know, even if it feels or looks bad, you know, I try to say thank you, because I know it's going to end up being a blessing, because it always is. I guess what I was going to close with is that I do a lot of things wrong, and I want to be right all the time, and I'm not. And what I've learned in this program is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because if I work these steps and follow the principles of this program that are embedded in the traditions, that at the end of my life, on my tombstone, it's not going to say, here lies Rebecca, she was always right. And it's not going to say, here lies Rebecca, she was my hero, she saved me. But if I continue to work these tools and be accountable and respectful to the people around me, then maybe it's going to say, here lies Rebecca, beloved friend, beloved wife, beloved mother. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.